Welcome to another vSphere What's New technical overview. My name is Phelim O'Leary. I'm a Senior Technical Marketing Architect here at VMware. In this video, we're going to discuss what's new in vSphere Plus for the cloud connected services. And we're also going to take a look at what's new in vSphere 8 Update 2, which has recently been announced. To remind you of our themes for vSphere, and in particularly vSphere 8 and vSphere Plus, we're trying to enhance operation efficiency, make IT more productive, remove some of the constraints that some mundane tasks have, especially around the areas of lifecycle management. We want to supercharge workload performance, get the best bang for our buck for our physical hardware, and also enable new technologies and new hardware accelerators. We're accelerating innovation for DevOps, and this is our Kubernetes offering, making it easier than ever to deploy vSphere Tanzu as a platform to get up and running and deliver DevOps services. So let's first start and take a look at what's new in the vSphere Plus space. So in case you need a reminder, vSphere Plus allows us to bring cloud benefits to on-premises without having to change your infrastructure, migrate workloads, or change any configuration. You simply deploy a cloud gateway appliance and connect to the VMware cloud. And this can enhance your existing on-premises deployments, be them VMware Cloud Foundation, standalone vSphere, and it also enhances vSAN, NSX, and ARIA offerings as well. This is a look at the vSphere Plus product evolution. So you can see from the initial GA in June of 2022, right up until now, all the various enhancements and additional service offerings that vSphere Plus can deliver to on-premises environments. And we're going to take a look at some of these in a little bit more detail. One nice enhancement is now that there is a free trial available for vSphere Plus, and included in that free trial, you can now test out reduced downtime upgrades for your cloud-connected vCenter instances. Reduced downtime upgrades is very, very cool. It allows you to upgrade your vCenters with minimal downtime, roughly about 3 to 5 minutes of downtime for upgrading an entire vCenter. Typically, that can take up to 30, 40, maybe even 60 minutes. So a nice powerful upgrade enhancement that you can test out now with a free trial of vSphere Plus. We've added enhanced visibility into the vSphere Plus ecosystem. Now you can view and manage VMware Cloud Gateway instances all from the same centralized cloud console for either vSphere Plus, vSAN Plus, and VMware Cloud Foundation Plus deployments. So each VMware Cloud Gateway instance gives you a connection status as well as view details, gives you the list of vCenter instances that are connected, and more. And you can open the Cloud Gateway console all from the same UI, giving you a complete observability of your Plus environment. We've listened to some of our customers, and we've introduced an easy way and comprehensive way to see your global subscription status in one location. So customers can have an overall subscription usage report of all the cloud-connected on-premises environments for both vSphere Plus and vSAN Plus, as well as being able to compare actual usage versus billing. In the area of lifecycle management, vSphere Plus now supports the upgrades of vCenter instances that are enabled for vCenter high availability. In the past, this was not a supported configuration. Now it is thanks to vSphere Plus. One caveat is that the vSAN HA instances must be deployed using the automated or the self-managed configuration. On the theme of lifecycle management, when we want to manage the cluster lifecycle of ESXi hosts, it can be a very slow and repetitive task. You must manage each cluster as a standalone entity. Well, that is no more thanks to ESXi Lifecycle Management Service. This is coming to vSphere Plus in early availability, and it allows us to essentially do the lifecycle operations that we know today at a cluster level, not even do them at a vCenter level, do them a step above at the vSphere Plus Cloud Console level, and be able to disseminate that updates and those image definitions down to multiple clusters, to be able to manage your entire fleet of ESXi hosts, manage the software lifecycle. Firmware lifecycle will also be coming in later releases. Be able to remediate multiple clusters across multiple vCenters. So very, very powerful lifecycle management service coming soon to vSphere Plus. Next, let's dive into some of the new features specifically in the on-premises offering for vSphere 8 Update 2. And again, we're going to start with some lifecycle or maintenance features. So there's a couple of different things that vSphere 8 Update 2 is doing to give more time back to administrators so that they're spending less time doing maintenance activities and sometimes even removing the need for some maintenance activities in certain use cases. So we're going to take a look at reduced downtime upgrades. I mentioned this in the context of vSphere Plus, but we're also bringing it to the on-premises non-cloud connected instances as well. This will allow you to patch, update, upgrade vCenter with only a few minutes of downtime. We're introducing an automatic vCenter LVM snapshot before patching and updating to allow for a quick rollback in the event that the patching fails. We're introducing non-disruptive certificate management, be able to replace or renew vCenter certificates without needing that service restart. And we're introducing reliable network recovery configuration. This allows us to automatically reconcile the vSphere distributed switch information in the event that vCenter has been restored from a backup. And we'll take a look at all of these now in a little bit more detail. So starting with vCenter reduced downtime upgrades for on-premises. This is what the user interface would look like. It's got 5 steps: ISO file, backup, update plugin, target appliance, and upgrade. And upgrade is split into 2 subtasks. Let's say we've got the prepare upgrade phase and this switchover phase. Now let me talk through each of these, and I'll actually just kick off a little picture-in-picture demo of the switchover phase, which is the only period of time where there is going to be downtime. So the first step that a customer would do would be attach the vCenter ISO file to the existing vCenter. So let's say we're on vCenter 8 Update 1. We would mount the vCenter 8 Update 2 ISO to our existing vCenter server. This allows us to orchestrate or have vCenter orchestrate the deployment of a new appliance. Next, we'll take a backup. Any good administrator is going to take a backup before we do any patching or upgrading event. We like to enforce that you have acknowledged that you have taken a backup in this instance. Then we will do an in-place update of the vCenter Lifecycle Manager plugin. This allows the current vCenter to orchestrate a newer build of vCenter. So think of it like we're patching the patcher. Once that update has been completed, it's very quick, it's only a couple of megabytes, the browser will refresh, and you may have a slightly different UI window here because we're now essentially running the UI from version 8 Update 2. We'll then define our target appliance. This is very straightforward. It's all the information that you would be asked if you were deploying a new vCenter. Give it a name, give it a size, give it a location, what cluster, what host, what network you want to define. And you can customize that, but you can also just quickly inherit the existing vCenter's information. So typically you're going to be putting the new vCenter appliance in the same cluster on the same network, on the same data store, for example. And you would define a temporary IP address. Why do we need a temporary IP address? Well, we're going to have both instances of vCenter online at the same time. And this allows us to have that reduced downtime event. So while both both vCenters are online at the same time, all the data from the source vCenter will be copied to the new vCenter. And it's only then, after we have completed that initial replication phase, we would initiate the switchover. And that's when we stop the vCenter services on the source and we start them on the new appliance, and it assumes the original FQDN, IP address, certificate identity, all that. And as you can see in the picture demo, as I've been speaking, the switchover has actually completed. And that wasn't an edited switchover. That was a true about, I think, 3 to 4 minutes of downtime to do an vCenter upgrade. So hopefully that really highlights how powerful this feature is. It allows you to even stage the upgrade so you can keep both instances of vCenter online and staged on, let's say, a Monday, and then perform this final switchover at the end of the week or over the weekend during a maintenance window. For this initial release, vCenter Reduced Downtime Upgrade is supported for self-managed vCenter instances. It does not support vCenters enabled with vCenter HA initially, or vCenters participating in enhanced link mode. And normally when we release features like this, you would have to get to vCenter Update to 8 Update 2 first before you can use it going forward. But you'll be able to use Reduced Downtime Upgrade out of the box and upgrade your vCenter instances running version 8.0 or 8.0 Update 1 to 8.0 Update 2 using Reduced Downtime Upgrade. So sticking with the patching, the updating kind of theme, we always recommend that you take a backup, and we're trying to make the product more clear and provide more obvious guidance around when to take a vCenter backup, when did you last take a vCenter backup. And in vSphere 8 Update 2, we'll actually inform you, one, if you have or have not taken a file-based backup, but also when was the last time that a file-based backup was taken. You might have set the backup scheduler to, once a week, or maybe somebody disabled the scheduler and you think that you've been taking backups, but in fact your last backup was from 3 months ago. So this will give you a little bit more visibility and allow you to take that all-important backup before you do a patching event. But in the event that you've ignored the guidance and you have not taken a backup, or you have not taken an image level backup or a VM level backup, vCenter itself will do an automatic LVM snapshot, or Logical Volume Manager snapshot, before the patching takes place. It's important to understand that this is not a VM level snapshot. It's not an automatic file-based backup, even though the UI wording might indicate as so. It's an OS level snapshot. And LVM snapshots are space efficient point-in-time copies of the LVM volumes. So in the event of a patching failure, you'll get a dialog box where you can try and attempt to resume the patching event, or you can roll back to the last backup version, or in this case, the LVM snapshot. So it allows you a quick rollback, a get out of jail free card, if you have not taken a file-based backup or an image level backup. So it's a nice safety net, but it's not a replacement for frequent full vCenter backups. Now, we introduced Reduced Downtime Upgrade there a moment ago. It reduces the amount of downtime vCenter needs to take when we're doing update or upgrade events. One frequent task that administrators may need to do, and they may need to do it more frequently as additional guidance comes out around certificate management and things like that, and browsers reducing the amount of or the length of validity that they will honor for a certificate. We can now replace or renew vCenter certificates without needing the service restart. So that's just a nice addition to vSphere 8 Update 2. Will allow you to do this all-important maintenance without interrupting other workflows or other environments. And again, sticking with the lifecycle theme and the backup restore theme, we might have been in situations where we've had an outage, we've had a disaster, we have to restore vCenter from backup, and we're running an environment where we've got one or more vSphere distributed switches. In the event that vCenter gets restored from a backup, its backup knowledge of the distributed switch may not be up to date. The backup may be a week old, it could be a month old, it could be longer. And the current version of the distributed switch lives on the ESXi hosts. So now when vCenter gets backed up and restored, we will automatically reconcile the current up-to-date information that's living on the clusters to the vCenter server. So it avoids that scenario where you've restored vCenter from backup, you're already kind of in the weeds, you're in an undesirable state as it is, and you won't have to worry about the distributed switches going out of sync or having inconsistencies any longer. And this will support distributed switches that are also using VMware NSX. It'll support things like adding or removing hosts from a VDS, connecting VMs to port groups, connecting VMs to NSX port groups, creating and deleting NSX segments, things like that. Now, shifting gears to more of a security theme here, we've been adding additional identity providers, starting with vSphere 7 and the addition of ADFS. And in vSphere 8 Update 1, we added support for Okta identity services. And we're expanding that even further again with vSphere 8 Update 2 with the introduction of Azure AD or Entra ID support for vSphere. So it's adding more options, more choice for identity providers, and allows us to bring all that multi-factor authentication goodness that all these providers actually deliver. Because this is federated identity, it means that vSphere never sees the user credentials. And that helps with both security, but also compliance efforts. It works like most web authentication services that you're using on a daily basis, where you're redirected to the identity service, and then once you authenticate, you're redirected back to your application. So vCenter will behave exactly like that. So now we have a larger choice for enterprise identity federation. We still support AD over LDAP-S. That's not going away. It's a good time to remind people that we have deprecated integrated Windows authentication, and that is expected not to be available in the next major version of vSphere. So it's still there in vSphere 7 and vSphere 8, but it's not expected to be there in the next major version. We introduced support for ADFS, as I said, in vSphere 7, and in vSphere 8, we've now added Okta and support for Microsoft Azure AD. Staying with security, just a reminder that with all releases of vSphere, we're doing additional work to make things more secure out of the box, changing some product defaults out of the box to align more with the vSphere security configuration and hardening guides. And updated hardening guides will be released as well to coincide with vSphere 8 Update 2. Now jumping to a couple of smaller enhancements, again sticking with this theme of enhanced operational efficiency. VLCM can support vSAN witness nodes and vSAN clusters today, but we're introducing support in vSphere 8 Update 2 to allow vSphere Lifecycle Manager to manage witness nodes that are participating in multiple vSAN clusters, so for shared vSAN witness nodes. This allows you to manage the image definition of the witness node independent of the vSAN clusters it is a member of. So with non-shared witness nodes, the vSAN witness node automatically inherits the build of the cluster that it's managing. But you may have use cases where you have a shared vSAN witness node and you may need some more flexibility in the build that it is running. vSphere configuration profiles was introduced in vSphere 8 and then further improved upon in vSphere 8 Update 1. vSphere 8 Update 2 adds full end-to-end UI workflow to create, edit, and apply vSphere configuration profiles and achieve that desired state model for cluster configuration. You no longer need to export the JSON document and make your edits there. You can still do that if you wish. So you'll have a new tab in the vSphere configuration profiles UI called Draft, and you can create a draft, and a draft is essentially a copy of the existing configuration that you would then edit. And once you've made your necessary edits, you can apply that draft to the cluster. You can also export drafts, import from file, or import from reference hosts as well. So for example, we're editing a draft here to add some NTP settings to our cluster configuration document. We would save the draft and then apply. Very similar to host profiles today. Something very quick and easy, but a welcome improvement when deploying Windows VMs, is that you can now specify the OU path when you're creating customization specs and have those Windows VMs deployed and customized using this OU path and join Active Directory at the desired path. So hopefully this minor improvement makes a major impact to your Windows deployment workflows. And another small but incredibly useful improvement is to some of the error messages, and in particular the error messages seen when VM files are locked. For example, in a scenario that a VM cannot be powered on the host that it's currently registered to, the message will now detail the file being locked and the host which currently has the lock. So previously you would have to go to the command line interface, either look at logs or run a set of command line tools to identify what host or what device may be holding the lock of the file. Now you can see this very easily in the log files in the tasks and events view itself. So the message will tell you the file being locked, the host that's trying to access the file, that would be the host name in this example, and the host that has the lock and the MAC address of the NIC on that host with the lock. So that's corresponded here in the error message with the IP address ending in .51 and the MAC address ending in 02. So now moving on to our third section, on supercharge workload performance, how vSphere is the best place to run the latest and greatest hardware accelerated workloads. And we're starting that with some updates around our DPU ecosystem. So we introduced support for DPUs or data processing units with the vSphere distributed services engine in vSphere 8. And we partnered with various partners, Dell, HP, NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel. And we're expanding that support now to also include servers from Lenovo and Fujitsu. So expanding our partner ecosystem and looking to expand this even further in future updates as well. Now moving to the area of GPU hardware accelerators. We've been making huge improvements in the last couple of releases around our support for GPUs and treating GPUs like first-class workloads. For example, we support the vMotion of GPU-enabled virtual machines now. And one thing that was still missing was smarter DRS and DRS load balancing of vGPU-enabled virtual machines. And with vSphere 8 Update 2, DRS will now make smarter initial placement decisions of GPU-enabled virtual machines, but it can also now be configured to do automatic load balancing of vGPU-enabled virtual machines. So let's take a look at the placement, the smarter placement engine here. So let's take an example where we've got our 3 hosts on this screen, and each VM on each of the hosts is consuming 2 GPUs. So we have 6 GPUs still available in our cluster for additional VMs. However, we've got a VM that's incoming, the orange VM, and that wants to use 4 GPUs. Now we have 4 GPUs, we have 6 available, but they're not all on the same host. So we've got no one host that can satisfy the VM requirements. So in previous releases, the new VM would just sit there, it wouldn't be able to be placed or powered on. But in vSphere 8 Update 2, DRS will automatically defragment the vGPU-enabled VMs to accommodate the new virtual machine. So it'll automatically vMotion a VM off one of the hosts, and that opens up space to allow the incoming VM to be placed. So in vSphere 8 Update 2, DRS will make better placement decisions, and it will also avoid this scenario from actually taking place in the when possible, because we still do want to avoid, when possible, migrating vGPU enabled virtual machines. They do have a much higher impact when it comes to the vMotion stun times. But now DRS is capable of taking a look at the cluster and doing load balancing automatically for vGPU enabled VMs. And speaking of that stun time, we have now the ability to identify the estimated max stun time of a vGPU enabled virtual machine. And this can be seen within the individual virtual machine's edit settings. And you can click a reference table, which will identify estimated VM stun times in seconds, depending on the network speed of your vMotion network and also the size of the vGPU memory in gigabytes. So it gives an administrator a better view of what is the expected max stun time for a particular virtual machine. And with that information, we can now define what we call a quality of service on either an individual cluster or an individual VM. What do I mean by a quality of service? Well, we can define what is the max tolerated stun time that we will allow in this particular cluster or for this particular VM. So an administrator could say that the maximum acceptable stun time that we will allow in this cluster is 10 seconds. So any VMs, any vGPU enabled VMs that their estimated max stun time is less than 10 seconds, DRS will automatically load balance those, or you can manually migrate those VMs with vMotion as well. Any VMs greater than 10 seconds, like the one on screen here with 12 seconds, that would be disallowed. That would not be allowed to migrate because we've defined our quality of service and this virtual machine exceeds that level and it may be too impactful to this particular workload. Like all virtual hardware releases, Virtual Machine Hardware version 21 increases some of our VM device maximums and adds support for some new configurations and operating systems. So to support even larger AI/ML workloads and support large language models and all these new AI innovations, we can increase the maximum number of vGPUs per virtual machine to 16. We can now have up to 256 NVMe disks attached to a single VM. This is distributed across a maximum of 4 adapters, with each adapter supporting up to 64 disks. Specifically in the Windows space, hardware version 21 adds support for NVMe 1.3 specification and also support for Windows Server failover clustering when using NVMe disks. Hardware version 21 also adds support for Red Hat 10, Oracle 10, Debian 13, and FreeBSD 15. Previous versions of vSphere may also support these operating systems. However, you do need vSphere 8 Update 2 and hardware version 21 to see the appropriate guest OS version in the VM dropdown, for example. And just a reminder that hardware version 21 only runs on ESXi 8 Update 2 and later. So keep that in mind during your update phase, as you don't want to update VMs to hardware version 21 or deploy new VMs using hardware 21 unless all hosts that you intend that VM to run on can satisfy that hardware version. And it's generally a recommendation that unless you need specific features that a new hardware version brings, for example, if you do need 16 vGPUs per virtual machine, there's usually no need to update the virtual machine hardware. And you can see KB article 1003746 for more details on this recommendation. Now, onto our last section before we wrap this up. It's in the area of DevOps in the vSphere Tanzu space and the Tanzu Kubernetes grid space. So everything that makes vSphere a great platform to run containerized workloads and DevOps services. We've had the supervisor cluster construct now since vSphere 7. And we've made it easier and easier to deploy, and especially with the enablement of an import-export option in vSphere 8 Update 2. And that allows you to export the configuration to an easy readable JSON document, and then reuse that JSON document to deploy additional supervisor clusters hosted by vSphere 8 Update 2. And it also allows you to do a very quick clone. So essentially doing a copy and paste of a supervisor cluster from one vSphere cluster to another vSphere cluster to very easily expand your available resources and to deploy additional TKG instances. You'll see the export config option and the clone config option at the Supervisor tab for enabled supervisor clusters. That allows you to export any existing supervisor cluster config today and import it into another vCenter, or do a clone within the same vCenter instance. And it's important to note the clone doesn't clone any workload VMs, it doesn't clone any TKG instances. It's essentially taking the configuration of one supervisor cluster and deploying a new supervisor cluster using that same configuration with some slight unique identifiers changed as well, like name and certain IP addresses. If you're starting a brand new supervisor cluster, you'll see an import config button in the top right of the workload management pane, and that allows you to import the JSON document. And taking a look at that JSON document, it's very straightforward, it's not very long, and it's quite easy to read. You can see things like the name of the vCenter address, the name of the vSphere zone if you're using zones, the data center that this is going to reside in, name of the supervisor cluster, and things like the storage policy and network identity as well. So you can either keep all that information static and only change what you need, or make larger customizations to this as well. So starting with NSXT version 3.2, the NSXT load balancer has been deprecated, and this will be removed in some upcoming releases of NSXT. So we're encouraging customers to migrate or start using the NSX Advanced Load Balancer, the NSX ALB, or the AVI load balancer as it may be known as. So we've had support for the NSX Advanced Load Balancer for vSphere Tanzu supervisor clusters using the vSphere networking stack, so using just a standard vSphere distributed switch. And you had the choice of using the AVI load balancer or the NSX ALB alongside using either a HA proxy. If you had full NSX in your environment and you were to enable vSphere Tanzu on that cluster, you were initially forced to only use the NSXT load balancer. Now you will have a choice to either use the NSXT load balancer, which as I mentioned is now deprecated, but you'll now also be able to deploy the NSX Advanced Load Balancer in those environments as well. Initially with vSphere 8 Update 2, this is for greenfield supervisor clusters only, so net new supervisor clusters. We are working on a future migration path from the NSXT load balancer to the NSX Advanced Load Balancer. Now, vSphere Tanzu isn't just a great platform to run containerized workloads using TKG. It's also a great platform for developers and DevOps users to deploy and manage traditional virtual machine workloads and applications. So it's important to remind ourselves that applications may not just be in one format. They may not just be virtual machines or just containerized workloads. It may be a mix of both. So we're expanding our bring your own image service for the VM service and allow DevOps users and developers to self-service and self-provision Windows virtual machines now and customize those virtual machines alongside Linux-based virtual machines, all from their attached content library. DevOps users can use kubectl to deploy and customize Windows VMs to their namespaces. The Windows guest customization data is just using the standard sysprep format, and it's encapsulated as a secret and then included in the VM deployment specification. Again, just expanding or bring your own image story for the DevOps personas. Now we can self-service provision Tanzu Kubernetes grid clusters using on Photon or Ubuntu, and we can now deploy Linux-based virtual machines alongside Windows-based virtual machines. In addition to the DevOps users being able to self-provision, we needed to develop a way for DevOps users to actually self-publish and save those virtual machines back to a content library. So we're expanding the content library and the VM image, the VM service to introduce a self-service VM image registry. This allows DevOps users to write back to content libraries. So in current releases or previous releases, content libraries can be attached to namespaces, and through the VM service, DevOps users can deploy any virtual machines that are in those content libraries, but they had no mechanism to save those virtual machines back or save any new virtual machines back to the content library. Now administrators can define whether or not a content library is read-only, which is the current behavior, but they can now make it writable to allow those DevOps users to write back to the content library, and it creates a self-service VM image registry for all those namespaces. More than one content library can be writable from one particular namespace, and content libraries can be shared between multiple namespaces. So you could have multiple DevOps users writing to the same content library as well. So that brings us to the end of this video highlighting the updates to vSphere for both vSphere Plus and vSphere 8 Update 2. Just to wrap up, we do have our YouTube channel, which is where you're hopefully watching this video. So I'd encourage you to subscribe. You'll get notified of when we do some live streams. We do a monthly stream called vSphere Live, where we talk about different things. We have experts answer questions right there and then. So hopefully you will join us for the next vSphere Live. For security advisories, we always remind people to sign up for the security advisory emails. This is not a marketing gotcha or anything. This is just for the VMware security advisories, and they're emailed out the moment they are published. So you'll be the first to know when you get those emails. And for everything from the vSphere technical marketing team, please check out core.vmware.com. We also have some sister pages there for vSAN and for VMware Cloud Foundation, as well as full tech zone sites for all our other products like NSX, Horizon, and so on. So thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.